Oh my god! Let's get out of here! Use the light!
Obscure is a third-person survival horror game and friendly fire simulator. The game was published by Dreamcatcher Interactive and developed by Hydra Vision Entertainment, a French company that was founded in 1999 and later in 2012 was renamed to Mighty Rocket Studios, as it remains to this day, where it is uncertain if the studio is still even active, with their last post on social media and everywhere else being on 2014. When they were named Hydrovision Entertainment, they had developed quite a few games in that time span, most notably of course being Obscure 1 in 2004, Obscure 2 in 2007, and the PS2 port of the game with one of the coolest inventory systems of all time, Alone in the Dark 2008. And if you disagree, you can go fuck your penis? It's hard to find much information on Hydrovision Entertainment ever since they rebranded, since sites containing their information were nuked off the internet, and I don't know how to use the Wayback Machine and I refuse to learn it. The last game Hydrovision made was Final Exam, a simple but fun arcadey beat-em-up that is a spin-off of the Obscure series. They were apparently working on a third installment of the series, but it was supposedly cancelled since the studio went defunct. But it's hard to say since there wasn't any sort of official announcement. Obscure stood out from other survival horror games of the time for being set in a school setting and for including a co-op mode, where you and another player can play through the entire game together, while constantly hitting yourselves in friendly fire. With the setting and co-op modes combined, it created a cult classic that is still somewhat remembered to this day, with people still replying to the company's last tweet, asking the dark void that is Twitter for a continuation of the series, or maybe a remaster of the old ones, but never to be heard since they are probably defunct. Like many horror movies of the time, it starts with rock music playing at the intro. In this case, it is Still Waiting by Sum 41, which doesn't play in the current re-release of the game. In the intro, it introduces all the protagonists, those being Kenny, Josh, Stan, Shannon, and Ashley. Kenny decides to stay in the school to keep playing basketball. When he's done, he goes to the showers to get his stuff back. That's when he receives a call from Ashley, and while distracted, someone takes his bag unnoticed. Kenny goes after the person, finding a garden behind an iron gate. He goes through a mysterious door in the back, finding a creepy basement, and instead of doing the intelligent thing of getting the hell out of there, Kenny decides to explore around, finding cages and weird noises. He finds another person in much worse shape, named Daniel. Daniel keeps repeating that he doesn't want to take more injections, and when he gets calmed down, he says that they need to get out of there. When they try to leave, strange monsters come out to attack them, killing Daniel in the process. And when Kenny reaches the ladder to leave, someone blocks him in. The next day, Ashley and Shannon talk about how Kenny didn't come home last night and that maybe something happened to him. They decide to join up with Josh to search for Kenny, so they meet up at the cafeteria.
Nothing works in this crummy school.
We're leaving in 5 minutes anyway.
Quit it, Josh. This is no time for that.
Come on, we need to record our investigation, don't we?
Whoa, was this game written by baby man Jordan Peterson? But the janitor locks them inside without noticing, and they break out of the room. After exploring a bit of the school, they manage to get to the second floor, where smaller monsters start attacking the gang, when teacher Walton shows up and smashes a window, letting light into the room, and it immediately kills the creatures, burning them to a crisp. Walton says that they should leave the campus because it's not safe, but the gang tell him they need to find and rescue Kenny. So Walton unlocks the door to the courtyard for them to find the principal, because he'll know more. They go to the courtyard, where they find that there is no cell signal, and Josh's camera dies, with the only option remaining to find the principal. This is as good a time as any to have a spoiler break. Yeah, I'll tell you guys, I've been working on this video, the Obscure Review, since the beginning of January. It was supposed to come out in January, but I just couldn't release the damn thing because of so many factors, and, out of my reach. It was just horrible. January was goddamn horrible for me. But, I'm finishing it. I'm finishing it now. Here in February. Yeah. Oh, by the way, spoiler break. If you wanna skip spoilers to play the game, then just skip to the timestamp. I don't care. You know how this works, god damn it. The gang goes to the classrooms in search of the principal, and there they find Stan altering his grades. They tell him about the whole situation, and he decides to join up with them to find out more. I decided not to bring him along because he sucks! They continue on exploring, and they solve a puzzle in the principal's office, where they find a safe behind a painting with a key to the library and a letter from someone named Elizabeth, revealing that the principal has a twin brother and that they both quarreled because of their experiments. The gang then decides to go to the library, where they find the principal. He tells them to speak with the janitor to let them out of the school. That's when the sun goes down and it turns into night. When they go speak to the janitor, they find him dead. Inside the place, they find monitors, and one of them suddenly lights up to reveal that Nurse Wixon needs help. And so they decide to go there to help out. After turning on the lights in the infirmary, they talk to Nurse Wixon, where they ask about Kenny, and she says with a sad tone, another one, and that Leonard wants to get out. They don't get much else out of her. They go back to the administration building, where the roof has collapsed. After using a handwheel to move one of those column thingies, they find a reel of film and a photo of an elevator shaft. When they leave the room, they find Walton desperately searching for Friedman. He asks about Kenny, and they say that they are going to try the auditorium for a way to the basement. So the teacher gives them the key to unlock the place. Going there, they find old photos of Friedman, and he looks the same as he does now. Going up the elevator, the gang fights a mini-boss fight, and after defeating it, they descend the elevator shaft, where they barely escape the elevator collapsing on top of them. Now at the basement, the gang searches around and finds Kenny in a cell room, who says to them to be quick because Friedman is coming back. But they take too long, and Friedman tosses a gas grenade, which knocks everyone out. When everyone wakes up, they notice that they have been all locked up in the cells. Why did I say it like that? But they manage to free themselves. Kenny suddenly falls to the ground, and he reveals that all of them were infected, and that if sunlight hit them, they'll transform. To try and fix this, the gang goes to speak with the nurse again. In the infirmary, they find Nurse Wixon wounded and barely alive, and she tells them to find the antidote in the basement through a big door, which the characters never saw when they were there. But Wixon says there's another entrance by the gardens, and then she succumbs to her wounds. After some investigating around, they find a student's diary detailing a shit ton of information. So sit tight. The diary dates back to 1969. Nice. With some research done on the school. Mainly because of the back then 26 disappearances. The school was founded in 1902 by Herbert and Leonard Friedman, both twin brothers, with Herbert still being alive and the same age all these years later. There's a photo with a woman that seems very similar to Nurse Wixon. Wixon and Leonard were married in 1885. According to a marriage certificate, and according to a newspaper article, Leonard died in a plane crash in 1921. There were also a scandal involving unethical experiments that they were both doing on people. Also, in 1890 they went on an expedition to Africa to find medicinal plants. After spending 6 months there, they brought back a large number of plants, with mortifilia being their primary subject of their research. The student then does an Assassin's Creed trailing mission and finds Friedman's secret lab with an anti-aging serum, with the monsters around the school being failed attempts to research this serum. With a new destination in mind, the gang searches around for ways to get into the gardens, but they are stopped by Walton. They tell him that there is an antidote, and that they know where to find it because of a map. Then Walton takes the map and begins contorting. He then runs off with the map and locks the door behind him, leaving the poor teens armed to the teeth with guns to die. After leaving the library, the gang goes to the gardens, where they find the other entrance to the basement. After exploring quite a bit of the place, they put 4 statues on a machine, and it unlocks the big door the nurse talked about. Then we see Teacher Walton entering it. Then we see Walton pointing a gun at Friedman, demanding the antidote. But Friedman says it will be useless, because Walton has been in too much contact with the sun. Walton then blasts Friedman and grabs the antidote. But before using it, a large creature kills him. Friedman, in his last breaths, apologizes to the creature, who he calls Leonard, his twin brother. He almost had found the formula to cure him, and with the principal's death, Monster Leonard goes berserk, and the last boss fight begins. After defeating it, the gang uses fallen debris to climb to the gymnasium, so that they can finally get away from this survival horror. But then Monster Leonard comes back for round 2, up in the gymnasium. He then gets burned by the sun, thus defeating him. After that, you will get an ending depending on how many of the characters survived, with the characters that survived showing up in the end screen, while a monster comes crashing down, leaving it ambiguous if the character survived. That is, until you remember that they released a sequel to this game, nullifying the cliffhanger. The story is simple, but fun nonetheless, with a small cast of characters, each occupying their respective cliché. Even if following these clichés does make the story more generic and more similar, like other games in the 2000s, it would have been more interesting if the characters reacted differently to the events of the story. But as it stands, they all react the same in all of the cutscenes, almost the exact same lines of dialogue even, and quickly abandoning their teen movie archetypes to just survival horror protagonists without much personality. A lot of the story is also told in documents scattered around, and they go into some deep scientific terms to just tell the same story you've already seen 1,000 times. When they give you the first bit of clues of what's going on, you already know what the big reveal is gonna be. That just goes to show how predictable it really is. It's clear that the focus of the game and the thing that separates itself from other games is the multiple protagonists and the different ways they change the gameplay. So, let's talk about that. For the kids in the audience that were born after 2010, firstly, what the hell are you doing here? And secondly, there were video games way back in the day that you couldn't control the camera, that some might call it fixed camera angles. This game is one of them, with most of the angles obscuring just enough of the screen that you can't see the monsters that lie beyond. Just hear their growls, leaving you wondering as to what there really is over there. But the scariness doesn't reach the likes of its contemporaries, because of the fact that the entire game can be played co-op or solo with an AI companion, with each character having unique special abilities and statistics, also providing the classic cliches of movies of yesteryear. But I will say that in a genre of game that requires exploring rooms for items and supplies, that makes Josh by far the best character to play, as since His special ability is to identify if there are still items to pick up in the room. Not only that, but he moves quite fast in comparison to the other characters. And that leaves the most useless character being Stan, since his special ability is just identifying if there are locks that can be lockpicked in a certain area and unlocking them faster. But that's never useful because I can't recall a lockpickable door being in a dangerous area. And if there was, it was easily unlocked by the other characters. With Shannon being in the runner-up for not being too good to play as, since her special ability is to vaguely say what the objective is. And this isn't that helpful, because you can just open the map and kind of see where to go, essentially just doing her job. She does have a major advantage in being able to heal more than the other characters, but at that point, just use first aids, which heal almost to full. Kenny and Ashley are very similar, except that Kenny runs and Ashley hits harder than the others. They are by far the best companions in my opinion. That, of course, comes at the cost of the AI not being really good, since they won't start shooting until you begin shooting and focus in with the flashlight, requiring you to sometimes switch to the other character to help out the main one. It doesn't help as well that both of you have a shared ammo pool, but all that can be alleviated if you play in co-op, with another player controlling the other character, assuming, of course, that the player knows what they're doing.
Wait. Yeah. Fuck. Fuck! I tried to run. I tried.
Another aspect of survival horror games are the puzzles, and in Obscure it is pretty much completely overlooked, with it having pretty much only one puzzle, and it being really fucking precise on where you have to point it to. Like it's obvious where it needs to go, but it's just so annoying getting to the exact point where it needs to go. The combat, while simple, serve its purpose well enough, while being difficult just enough, with scarce ammunition making you have to conserve ammunition and feel a bit paranoid to find more ammo and health items. I will say that I found it strange that this campus was loaded with guns and ammunition until I remembered that it is an American school. To help out with the scarcity of ammo, you can attach a flashlight to your gun and focus your light on the monster to remove a sort of darkness that surrounds them, so that you can more easily shoot them. Wait a second. The biggest differentiator of Obscure compared to other games is the setting of a campus, making use of classrooms as explorable locations, but that fades away in the later half of the game, switching the school setting for generic labs and underground locations. All of that is elevated by the other aspects of the game, such as the music in this game is really strange on how good it is. It almost feels like it's from a different game, with haunting choirs and orchestral music, making the threat feel more spiritual in nature and not giving the vibe of a teen horror movie at all. But by making it different, especially for the time and for this type of game, it ended up standing out. The composer for the game was Olivier de Rivière, sorry if I butchered the name, a well-renowned composer that is still working on games to this day, in games like A Plague Tale: Innocence, Alone in the Dark, Vampire, and a whole shitload more, with all of them having awesome music. He would later return for the sequel of Obscure, continuing the same motif through both games, but adding more horror elements to it, especially the main menu theme, making it a classic, at least for me, since I played so much of these games when I was just a wee lad. Another aspect that in my opinion has aged well are the graphics of the game, mostly in the environments. giving the feeling of a decrepit school with everything just looking the right amount of fucked to make a feeling of oppression on the player. But I will say that the facial animations are a bit simplistic, which is to be expected from a game of the time. But that is sort of remedied in the voice acting of the game, which is good with voice actors that are still working to this day and that have been in 1,000 projects. However, there is still a feeling of the uncanny valley with the acting, not in the performances themselves, but mostly in how the dialogue is written.
Yeah, everything I see up in this piece is whack.
So what do you think those noises are? I'm not kidding. We can't find Kenny.
What? You better quit jerking me.
Even Mr. Walden was injured. He had to go to the infirmary. We're stuck here. We've got to tell Friedman if we want to get out of this school.
I suspect it is mostly because the game was originally written in French and then translated into English, so it can sound a bit stilted. Maybe it sounds better in French, but I wouldn't be able to say since I don't know the language. So who knows what they were actually saying in the original language. I just know that this isn't the first time the French exaggerated a different culture than theirs. With the PS2 having a ton of great survival horror games, it would always be a struggle to stand out amidst the crowd. But in my opinion, Obscure had managed to do that with the differences it had. It stood out both in a mechanic sense, since it has co-op and permadeath, and in a vibe sense, especially with the setting of a school and the music that, while it doesn't fit the game, is still amazing with how well constructed and memorable it is. And blending all of that together, it creates an underrated gem of years past that while many remember fondly, it lies forgotten in the average gamer's mind that now just thinks of Fortnite and of different ways to be homophobic on optional gay romances in modern games. It just goes to show that in the developer's last post on Twitter, all the way back in 2014, there are many recent replies asking them to make an Obscure free or some sort of remake, but it's doubtful that the company is still even active. That just goes to show that these games were special to a lot of people, especially when they were young, playing together with friends and family. And even to this day, there aren't games quite like this, especially co-op survival horror games. But like the people replying to Mighty Rocket's last tweet, one can dream that one day it will be brought back to life once again, and maybe have a Stan skin in Fortnite. Congratulations, sport! You have reached the end of the video. Glad you made it all the way through. I'm sure you did. Or maybe you skipped all the way to the end for some reason. Again, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Firstly, I want to say sorry that I didn't release a video on January. Again, as I said in the spoiler break, January was fucked. And, yeah. But now I released it. It's out. It's out now. Buy it on Blu-ray. I don't know, I'm just rambling here. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you are having a great day, and, yeah. Now I'll go edit the video part of this video, and that's gonna be me for like a couple of days. So yeah, yeah. Goodbye, folks. Good night. And, yeah, stay safe out there.